Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring the August 2022 Clear Stamp and Die kit from Spellbinders. This particular set is, this club kit is $17.50. The overall value is over $30, so that's a steal. And it includes the stamps, these beautiful florals, and then the matching, like the coordinating dies to cut them out. And if you are a stamper, you know, most of the time a stamp set like this will cost you $15 on its own. So to pay $17.50 and get both of them is amazing. But anywho, we're going to be doing some solid stamping today. This isn't something that I do a ton of because I am a colorist, but sometimes it's really nice just to have a quick something that you can just knock out really fast. And you'll probably notice this video is a lot shorter than my regular videos because this process is so quick. So first things first, I wanted to stamp out the centers of the larger flowers, and I wanted them to be in yellow. So in order to protect them from the overstamping, I'm going to do a little bit of an emboss resist. So I am just heat setting these with clear embossing powder. It's going to make the yellow, this is squeezed lemonade, it's going to make the yellow a little bit bolder. But other than that, it's just going to serve to protect that center and keep the color intact while I do the rest of my stamping over top of it. Distress Oxides is what I'm using. You can use any inks that you own. They will all participate in the resist portion for the most part. But I am stamping in them because I just like the way they stamp. That's the reality of it. Here, the largest center has just a little bit of like a white center in addition to the stamping portion. So I didn't want that to be the same color as the rest of my flower. So as you saw there, it's very technical, very involved process of taking a scrap piece of masking paper and trimming off one small rectangular, irregular piece to cover up my center. And that's what I'm going to use as my mask. But seriously, I just didn't, you could totally stamp over that, but I just wanted to keep it white. So I am stamping some of these twice, some of them once. It just depends on what kind of coverage that I got to begin with. Some of them stamp beautifully the first time, and some of them just needed a little bit more help. Now that could be due to a variety of things. How juicy my ink pad is, some of the colors I use more than others. I didn't prep any of my stamps. I honestly rarely do. But if you would like to, you can just get a clear or a white eraser and go over your clear stamps, and it will remove anything that's left over from the manufacturing process. But usually I just stamp it a couple of times till it stamps clean, and then I'm good with it to have it a little bit more seasoned. So once I had stamped these three, I just flipped the paper over and stamped them again. Now I'm going to do more of the two-step stamps. So a lot of these are either stems or leaves that I'm stamping down. And then they have a matching friend that will either give them like more detail on the leaves along with the stem, or there's flowers that go with them that need to be stamped. This is, you guys know, I'm going to be honest with you. If I have any regrets, I'm going to tell you. I did overcrowd my stamps a bit, and that was kind of a problem when I went to die cut them out. Ultimately, it ended up being fine, but just make sure you're giving yourself enough wiggle room between them if you intend on die cutting them out. So since this isn't something that I do a lot of, I was trying to come up with an idea for how I wanted to arrange them with all of their, little pieces parts. And ultimately what I came up with was doing a wreath. And there's a bunch of beautiful wreaths on the market, and there's a bunch of like wreath builders that will help you get super symmetrical stamping. But really, in order to create a wreath, all you need is a circle die. And then you can build your images around your circle die. Now, if you want to stamp them, you would just like trace your circle, stamp where you need to stamp, and build your wreath that way. But there are some people who do struggle with placement. I have a kind of trick for how I work on my placement when I'm doing all these individual dies, but really you can cut most of the dies out at the same time, and the stamping is super fast because I'm not using like copious amounts of colors. I used the same. If you watched my more recent video where I did distress, like the pigment stamping with the Distress Oxide stamping, I used almost exactly the same color palette because they were already on my desk and I didn't have to get up. And I have told you guys before, I am cheap and I am lazy. And those are true facts about myself that I accept wholeheartedly. So we're just going to go through and stamp these out and then die cut them and then start building our wreath. It's a pretty straightforward card. As far as story time, I will try to fit in what I can, but because this is a shorter video, we might leave you with another cliffhanger. So allow me to set the scene in case you missed the last video. Molly has had her ACL surgery. She has busted out of her crate in the morning. She's jumped the playpen in the evening. It's thunderstorming. Her anxiety is high. And so thankfully my husband has rebuilt the crate. I get her in the crate. I cover the crate up with a blanket. I go upstairs to check on this Benadryl situation that they've told me to give her. While I'm up there, Caitlin starts crying. Caitlin's crying for approximately 1 second before I am in the bedroom and trying to locate the pacifier. While I am trying to locate the pacifier, I locate a giant pile of baby vomit instead. So she's obviously very upset. She's crying quite a bit. I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus, what have we gotten ourselves into? So I go to pick her up. She is so distraught and crying so much at this point that she actually wakes Eric up. And we have the baby monitor. It's set to have the noise so he can hear what's going on. He comes into down the hallway into the bedroom and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, she's covered in puke. And my husband, I don't know if you have a rule in your house, but like my husband does not do vomit well. His I'll handle the poop, but I can't do the puke. And so that's fine. Sometimes you just have to know. On the flip side, my sister used to pay me $1 for every poopy diaper I would change when she was babysitting my nephew because she can't do the poop. But to be fair, I don't think she can do the puke either. But everybody's got their thing. So he's like, I'll change the bed. So I'm taking her downstairs. And once I get her out of her room and into the light, I can see that it is in her ear. It's in her hair. It's all over the side of her face. So it appears that she has gotten sick and then she has laid in it. Let's go back to the card. So here, I'll link to this stripe background. This is also by Spellbinders. I've used it in the past. I didn't end up using it, but it's still a very pretty background. So if you're interested in that, I will link it below. Here is my trick for how I build my things. And you guys have seen me use this before if you watch my channel. Tombow Mono Multi-Glue, repositionable when it dries. I don't understand why everybody doesn't use this glue even for these things. Just have it on hand. But so I'm going to put a little bit of the glue on the backs of all of my die cuts. I'm going to wait until it dries, which takes approximately 45 seconds to a minute. I tap it with my fingers to make sure it's dry so that I don't glue it permanently. And then this die cut I've just cut out of white cardstock. I'm going to start building my wreath. And for symmetry, I'm going to do all the pieces at the same time. So my 2 pink flowers go down. My 2 green leaves go down. My 2, saltwater taffy style flowers, they go down. I'm doing it at the same time and I'm building the wreath out in the same way so that everything is symmetrical. And at the end, it's going to give me a very polished piece. And so then once that is complete and it's built, I will go back in with the glue. You can use Tombow Mono Multi-Glue, or I like Honeybee, I like Gina K, I like Lawn Fawn, I like Hero Arts. There's a lot of good glues out there. Whatever you got, whatever you like. Don't be like my friend Weeda and use Elmer's glue though. That's not as good. A lot of water in that. But anywho, so I take her downstairs. Eric's changing the sheets. I take her downstairs. I get her bathtub. I put it in the sink. I strip her down. Now that she's been held and picked up, she's not really upset. She's not crying. And And I'm like, maybe it was just bad baby food, like, you know, because she had her baby food before she went to bed, or, you know, something. Maybe there's just something going on that, you know, this is just like a one-time thing. It's happened to me. I had a bad fruit cup one time. Got up in the middle of the night, threw up, went back to bed, was fine the next day. And so I get her stripped down. I get her into the tub. I wash her all up. She's happy. She's playing, even though it's like 1:20 in the morning at this point. So Eric comes down. He cleans up the tub. I'm going back to get her dressed. We use the little sleep sacks. We call it a bag of baby because they can't have blankies. So, you know, you put them in the little bag for their feet so it keeps them warm. So I get her onesie on. I get her diaper on. I got one sleeve on for the bag of baby. And I pick her up to put her, like, to swing the sleep sack down around her feet. And when I pick her up, she starts vomiting again. All over herself, all over her, it's like pooling in her lap. And I'm like, oh, baby, don't put that tub away. We need it again. So now we're on to bath number 2. And again, once the throwing up is done, she is happy, she is fine. So I'm like, oh man, like what is going on here? This poor child, you know, because you know how you feel as an adult when you're throwing up, when there isn't anything left to throw up and you're dry heaving and, you know, your stomach muscles hurt. And I just felt so terrible for her. It just seems so violent with her little teeny tiny body. So after that, I get her washed up again. I get her dressed again, and she's super tired. Obviously, because she's woken up in the middle of the night. There's no way I'm gonna feed her again. 0% chance on that. And so we kind of soothe her. I tell Eric, just go to bed because he has to work in the morning. I'm like, go to bed. I will stay up with her. So I think I got into bed at like 3 a.m. was finally by the time she had settled down and gone back to sleep. And then for the rest of that night, we had no incidences. So here, I stamped the sentiment. I mean, Distress Oxides really stamp so well. Like, they're good. They're good, solid stampers. So I used the peacock feathers to stamp my sentiment because it matched this cardstock that I had, which I think, let me look at the name. I think it's a Gina K. Tranquil teal cardstock from Gina K. And then I put foam tape all over everything, all over all the things. And then I'm going to adhere that down, accent it with a couple of I think it was the aquamarine that I used, Spellbinders, cute little gems. It is the aquamarine, and then add some shimmers and some white gel pen. So that morning, or that evening, like, she goes back to bed, I go back to bed. Eric was taking her to daycare the next morning, on his way to work. So I got into bed at 3. At 7 o'clock, he comes in and he's like, hey, I tried to feed her and she threw up again. And I'm like, okay. So I get up. Obviously, she's not going anywhere that particular day. I get up. I let her, you know, tummy kind of settle. And I think after about 2-3 hours of being awake, I fed her 2 ounces. That stayed down. I waited 45 minutes for that to stay down, and I fed her another 2 ounces. And it went along that whole way during the day with her being fine, with her keeping it down. So we went, you know, we did 2 ounces twice. That stayed down. So then we upped it to 3 ounces. By the end of the day, she was drinking 4-ounce bottles and was not throwing up. So I'm like, okay, maybe it is like legitimately just she ate something bad, 24-hour bug, you know, something like that. And then that night, she went to bed. She was fine. She was sleeping for a couple of hours. And it was like 11 o'clock, 11:30. And we're right back in the same boat. I was, where was I? I don't know. Eric called. He went upstairs to check on her and he called me. And he's like, we've got vomit. And I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus. So she's thrown up now. When he picked her, she threw up in the crib. When he picked her up, all over the floor. And then So now we're, back into the bathtub, back to cleaning her up. This one was not as easy as the first one, just because she kept on throwing up. So I will leave you with that information before. Now, mind you, this is just the Thursday of my week. So we still have the whole weekend to cover. But that is it. This is the whole card. I think that it came out super pretty. I really like the colors. I hope that you guys are inspired to try to kind of build your own wreath or do a little bit of solid stamping. I will link all this below, including Spellbinders' wonderful sale section. They always have great deals. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.